3,057 new cases in New South Wales today as Omicron continues its steady march. Queensland cases also escalating.
That continues the expected doubling trend every 48 hours.
But the state is holding the line on its border, today easing quarantine restrictions for close contacts.
For fully vaccinated, the quarantine period will be halved from 14 days to 7.
Public health experts continuing to call for mask mandates.
Adding masks would just make sense.
I think people need really clear guidelines, otherwise it gets very confusing.
The ACT today heeding the call, making masks mandatory indoors from midnight. But the message from the top is clear.
We've got to get past the heavy hand of government and we've got to treat Australians like adults. We have to move from a culture of mandates to a culture of responsibility.
Urging people to exercise that responsibility 4 days out from Christmas.
You might want to give that big night out a miss, particularly if you're going to see one of your elderly relatives over the Christmas period.
Those Christmas plans choking testing queues for interstate travel, with reports of 5-day waits for results, and some people in SA waiting up to 9 hours just for a swab.
I arrived just before 5 a.m. I kind of thought it would go a bit quicker.
Tell us what time you got here.
We got about 5:15.
So you've been waiting now how long?
Nearly 4 hours.
The bottleneck prompting swift action.
Effective immediately, those people coming from interstate that were previously required to have a test on arrival are not required if they have no symptoms.
And as state and territory leaders prepare for an emergency Omicron meeting tomorrow, booster interval timing is top of the agenda.
We're calling for a shorter interval between the second and the third dose, and the booster should be considered by everyone as a third dose.
So as we face another national challenge, is it time we had a truly national plan?
Well, the AMA's Dr Chris Moy is calling for a national approach to dealing with Omicron. Chris, states and territories have basically made their own decisions throughout this pandemic. Why does that need to change now?
I think the first thing is that our borders are open now, so the sins of one state are going to flow onto that of another. And also, I think there is this major issue about a loss of trust if there's inconsistency. It's much better when people are singing to the same songbook. But look, I am seeing what's happening. I mean, I kind of know what's happening behind the scenes with all the various states and their leaders and their chief health officers. There's a fair bit of tension at the moment because I think all of them are going, oh, this is what was the Doherty playbook said. And, we could control Delta with this. But the chief health officers are saying, no, we need to slow down. Omicron's new. We need to actually slow down, be careful, kind of work out where we stand. And in the meantime, put in things like masks and QRs and also maybe density limits while we slow things down. But the leaders are going, no way, it's Christmas. We can't be the Christmas Grinch. So it's a really, really fair bit of tension and inconsistency. And you're seeing that play out across the country at the moment.
And it would be fair to say that most people are feeling very confused about which information they should be trusting and following. But the argument for different approaches has always been it's the states and territories who have the health departments and who deliver the services. How then can you switch to a national approach when it has to be delivered locally?
But some of these things are self-evident right across the board. And it is things like masks and QR codes and probably density limits, which are very simple things, which were in fact part of the Doherty playbook in terms of flexing it up if you need to. I mean, the AMA's position is very much that given Omicron and what we don't know about it and the concern that it could be more infectious and break through our vaccines, that it could create a very sharp peak in cases and then lead to a lot of people ending up in hospitals. But there is a great reluctance at the moment across the board to do this, probably because of Christmas. And that's the thing. And, although we may be sounding like the Christmas Grinch, I think the ultimate Christmas Grinch would be a really terrible Omicron outbreak, which we could have actually altered the destiny of earlier on.
Dr Moy, you mentioned tensions. The former Deputy CMO, Dr Nick Coatsworth, has really hit out at the AMA over its position on some of this stuff. He says they've been very critical of the New South Wales government all along. They've ultimately proven to be wrong. They were wrong last Christmas. They'll be wrong this Christmas as well.
There's two parts to this. I don't want to engage with Nick because I was the chair of the ethics committee, and it's normally thought to be unprofessional to be engaging in disparaging comments about other doctors or other health professionals. But
to be fair, he's talking about your position and whether it's justified and whether it's actually inflating the level of problem and asking for a response that isn't met by the actual numbers.
First up, he did in fact call our organisation a peanut organisation or something like that. So I don't think it was quite as simple as that. Nevertheless, the flip side is that where we are at the moment, most of the epidemiologists, including those at Doherty, are saying we should be taking this more seriously. We could get it wrong, and it may turn out to be a storm in a teacup. But if this turns out to be something serious, then we would have missed the opportunity. And the idea that you can make changes later really gets away from the fact that the things you do earlier make a difference later. And a lot of the epidemiologists, including, as I said, at Doherty and various others, are saying exactly the same thing as the AMA.
Dr. Moy, apparently that Doherty modelling is showing that in February we could hit 200,000 cases a day if we don't reimpose some restrictions. Are the boosters the way through this?
Look, I think the first is that some of their assumptions, they have indicated they're worried about the cases as well, and that's based on Omicron being no worse than Delta. Hopefully that's not the case. But the other thing I'd say to you is that the boosters are going to be very difficult to get out in time. So just to give you an idea, at the moment we have to get a total of 4 million shots done in December, by the end of December, with the holidays and everything. And we've done, I think, about 1.5 million so far. By end of January, we have to get to 7 million boosters, and then we have to add children, which is another 2.5 million. That's 10 million shots by the end of January. That's just with current settings. So we've got a massive task. Now, if we want to reduce that down to 3 months, that'll just take it almost to unmanageable levels. So the boosters are going to be important. We need to get as many boosters into arms as possible. But the bottom line is that calling for boosters is one thing, but we also need to use our other levers. And again, these are relatively small things that the AMA is calling on. We are not calling for panic. We are calling for sensible measures to put a handbrake on things while we work out where we stand and to get as many boosters in people's arms as possible.
Dr. Chris Moy, thanks so much for your time this evening.
It's a pleasure.